Today we're going to be talking about the use of colons, hyphens, and apostrophes. Let's start with the colon first. The colon is a formal mark of punctuation used to introduce something that is to follow, such as a list, a quotation, or an explanation. So there are many different uses for that, and let's take a look at them now. The first, the use of a colon after a main clause to introduce a formal list, an emphatic or long restatement, an explanation or an emphatic statement, or a summary. And here are some examples. These cars are my favorites. And then you have the colon, and then you list the cars. Cadillac, Chevrolet, Toyota, Oldsmobile, and Pontiac. And this would be considered an example of a list. The next example, he worked toward one objective. And then you put the colon before that objective that's listed, and that is a degree. And this is a restatement. Then the next one, let me emphasize one point. I do not accept late papers. Let me emphasize one point, and then you have your colon before the actual statement. I do not accept late papers. Another use of the colon is to use a colon to introduce a formal quotation or a formal question. First example here, Walt Disney said, and then you have your colon, and then you have the actual quote. If you can dream, you can do it. And this is a formal quotation. Another exception to this rule, and would be acceptable as well, is you could put Walt Disney said, comma, and then that have the quotation. So either a colon or a comma before introducing a formal quotation is acceptable. The next one, the question is this. And then we have the colon before the actual question. It's a formal question. Shall we surrender? The third use of a colon, the use of a colon in the following conventional ways to separate a title or a subtitle, a chapter and a verse in the Bible, and hours and minutes, and then after the salutation in a formal business letter. So the first example is a title and subtitle. So Korea, colon, a country divided. Chapter and verse of the Bible, Genesis, and then it's 4:12. And then hour and minutes, 8:25 p.m., and then salutation in a formal letter, Dear Mrs. Chen. So you put a colon instead of a comma here. Now moving on to hyphens. The hyphen brings two or more words together into a single compound word. Correct hyphenation, therefore, is essentially a spelling problem rather than one of punctuation. Because the hyphen is not used with any degree of consistency, consult your dictionary for current usage. The following is a beginning list, though, a guide that will help you get through. So the first example, the use of a hyphen to separate the parts of many compound nouns. Brother-in-law, go-between are your two examples. Use a hyphen between prefixes and proper names, those being examples being All-American, Mid-Atlantic. Use a hyphen to join two or more words used as a single adjective modifier before a noun. Bluish-gray eyes, first-class service. And then use a hyphen with spelled out compound numbers up to 99 and with fractions. So examples there, 26, 2/3. Note, dates, street addresses, numbers requiring more than 2 words, chapter and page numbers, time followed directly by AM or PM, and figures after a $sign or before measurements abbreviations are usually written as figures, not words. Now moving into apostrophes. The apostrophe is used with nouns and indefinite pronouns to show possession, to show the omission of letters, numerals, or words referred to as words. So let's look at the examples. Number 1, a possessive shows that something is owned by someone. Use an apostrophe and s to form the possessive of a noun, singular or plural, that does not end in s. First example, man's coat. Second example, women's suits. Use an apostrophe alone to form the possessive of a plural noun ending in s. Girls' clothes, the Browns' house. Use an apostrophe and s or the apostrophe alone to form the possessive of singular nouns ending in s. Use the apostrophe and s only when you would pronounce the. So this example, James' hat, or if you would pronounce the s, James's hat. And then notice where you're putting your apostrophe. Use an apostrophe and s to form the possessive of certain indefinite pronouns. Everybody's idea, one's meat, another's poison. Use an apostrophe to indicate that letters or numerals have been omitted. So the first example, o'clock, which is short for of the clock, and then in the 90s, short for 1990s. Use an apostrophe with pronouns only when you are making a contraction. So a contraction is a combination of two words. The apostrophe in the contraction indicates where a letter or letters have been omitted. So we have the example of it is. It's a contraction of its. She has is a contraction of she's. And then you are is a contraction of your. If no letters have been left out, then you do not use an apostrophe. So let's take a look at these examples here. So this first one is incorrect. The dog bites its tail. This is not a contraction, so we would not pronounce it. And this is one thing you can think of. If you can say it is here in place, as you have for that contraction, what it means, then you would know this one is not correct. The dog bit it is tail, so that's not correct. The correct one would be the dog bit its tail without the apostrophe. Incorrect, who's the leader now? Which actually, as we would say that, for the correct would be who is the leader now, which is a contraction of who is. Another incorrect, it's a big problem. The correct way would be, this would be a contraction and you would pronounce it, it is a big problem. So this is where we know we need the apostrophe in this one. Use an apostrophe to indicate the plural of letters, numerals, and words used as words. Dot your I's, 5/8, ands. Note that the letters, numerals, and words are italicized, but the apostrophe and s are not. And that is including colons, hyphens, and apostrophes.